Let's now notice it at first, the way I began to shrink, not in body, not in age, in presence. My name is Samuel Reed. I'm 78. Somewhere along the years when, I can't say, I started disappearing, not leaving, not dying, just fading in small ways, in the spaces between people, in moments I didn't take. It happens quietly. One day you notice, and the world has already moved on. I wanted to say this while I still can. I don't remember the exact moment I began to disappear. I only know it happened gradually, almost imperceptibly. Conversations I used to join easily where my voice mattered started to pass over me. Rooms I once filled with laughter now felt too large for one person. Even my reflection in the mirror seemed to blur at the edges, like someone else's life had stepped in while I was distracted. I have lived 78 years. That is a long stretch of time to notice yourself becoming less. I have held jobs, raised children, tended gardens, fixed houses, and made dinners for people who left too soon. And yet, somewhere in the middle, I began to feel smaller. I think it started with quiet mornings. I would wake before anyone else, make coffee, and sit by the window. The world outside was moving. Children walking to school, cars passing, birds shifting in the trees. But I was still, too still, a spectator. I didn't realize then that observing wasn't the same as existing. My wife, Marjorie, left me 5 years ago. Cancer, quick and final. She didn't complain. She never did. She just left. Before she went, I could feel the spaces in our home widening. I could feel the quiet stretching. But I didn't name it. I didn't dare. After she left, I noticed the gaps more clearly. Plates on the table for one. 2 chairs instead of 4. Photographs on the wall that seemed smaller than the people in them. I began noticing other disappearances too. Friends who stopped calling, neighbors who moved away, colleagues who retired and vanished, not dramatically, not cruelly, just quietly. And I watched as though waiting to see if my absence mattered at all. I began to fade in my own mind first. There were days when I spoke and wasn't heard, when stories I told didn't spark recognition, when I tried to participate in family gatherings and felt like I was behind a glass wall watching without truly being there. I think that's where it began. Disappearing inside myself. I stopped asking questions. I stopped reaching out. I thought if I didn't intrude, maybe I wouldn't notice how little space I was occupying. I remember a night, years ago, when my granddaughter asked me to play a board game. She was 12, full of energy, and I was tired. We smiled and said I'd watch. I wanted to rest. She'd played without complaint, but I realized later that she hadn't needed me at all. The game had gone on. My presence had been optional, and it was the first time I felt truly invisible. The years built on that feeling. Small moments that stacked, invitations declined, phone calls missed, walks taken alone instead of together. A life increasingly unmarked by my own engagement. Work helped for a while. I ran my own workshop, fixed machines, rewired homes. There I mattered. People called my name. People asked my opinion. People trusted me. It was tangible. But even then, when I left the shop at the end of the day, I returned to a home that echoed with absence. I began to think about what it means to be present, not just breathing, not just moving through the day, but actually being felt by others. And I realized that for long stretches of my life, I had been alive but not noticed, by family, by friends, by myself. I remember finding a stack of old letters last year, letters I had written and never sent, love letters, apology letters, invitations to say things that didn't get said. I read them one by one and realized I'd been disappearing in writing too, waiting for a moment to be perfect, waiting for the right time to arrive. That time never came. The cost of disappearing is quiet. No one shouts, no one blames, it just grows. You notice the empty spaces at the table, the half-finished sentences, the silence that follows your words. I have memories of laughter. I have memories of joy. But sometimes now, when I reach for them, they feel like smoke, beautiful, warm, but impossible to hold. I went to the park last summer, sat on a bench watching children run past, parents calling after them, dogs chasing sticks. I thought about how many of those voices I would never hear in my own life again, and yet I wanted to shout to someone, I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still part of this. But no one was listening. Or maybe they were, and I had stopped noticing. I try to keep routines. I water plants. I read newspapers. I make tea. I call friends occasionally, but even in these tasks, I notice the edges of myself receding. I am present, and yet not entirely. There is a part of me that is becoming background, a whisper, a shadow of what I once was. I see my children grown and busy living their own lives. They are kind, they check in, but sometimes I feel like a photograph in their wallet, recognized, remembered, but not really interacted with, not truly needed. The silence around me has grown louder than the memories I treasure. There are nights when I sit in the living room, staring at the walls, thinking about the years I didn't notice myself slipping away. I think about the words I didn't say, the questions I didn't ask, the moments I let pass without asserting that I was here, that I mattered. I think of my own father who disappeared before I could understand him, and my mother who faded gradually into routines and habits until she was almost a ghost in the house I grew up in. I see now how this is a pattern, a thread I didn't recognize until I felt it myself. There is a mirror in my hallway. Some days I avoid it. Some days I stare at it for longer than comfort allows. I look for the edges of myself that may have gone missing, trying to find the man I used to be, the man who laughed freely, who spoke without hesitation, who believed he would always be seen. I think about what it means to leave a mark, not on paper, not in work, not in material things, but in presence. And I realize that disappearing is not always a choice. Sometimes it is gradual. Sometimes it is the accumulation of small absences of quiet withdrawal. Even now I feel it. My presence shrinking, my impact reduced to soft echoes in empty rooms. My voice a little quieter, my hands a little less steady, my steps a little more hesitant, and yet I still exist. I am still here. I still feel. I still remember. Some days I talk aloud to fill the emptiness. I speak to the photographs on the wall, to the plants on the windowsill, to the chair that sits waiting beside mine. I am trying in my own small way to assert that I am not entirely gone. Perhaps that is all any of us can do, acknowledge our presence, speak, reach, even when the world doesn't seem to notice.